Well, good afternoon, traders. Let's get into a currency recap. Joe with you here on the 6th of June. It is a Thursday. I've got my 2 cents about the markets. I've got some trades to share. Take responsibility for the outcome. You guys know this drill. I'm going to break down the news of the day. We're going to get into some technical analysis of the overall charts and share trades with the community as always.
Disclaimer. This video was created for professional Forex and crypto traders. Maverick Currencies is a proprietary trading firm that employs professional traders around the world. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits they generate. All trades and analysis in this video are for professional traders only. If you are interested in becoming a professional Forex and currency trader for Maverick, click the apply button in the video description. Let's break down what happened today.
Moving into the market analysis, you can see it was a very different day than it has been the last couple of days, as these markets didn't really seem to go anywhere. Let's break into the news. The S&P and the NASDAQ are both pushing highs, but the Dow itself is moving back above its 50-day. We have seen this, I call it a bifurcation in the markets, where we have this absolute outperformance in some of them, but the Dow itself had the most, or I should say the most aggressive corrective action. However, the way the Dow has been moving as of late, it is indeed just a very deep pullback where the S&P and the NASDAQ themselves are actually breaking into new highs. A nice high base breakout, ascending triangle breakouts. However, when markets do break out, like we've seen over the last few days, pushing higher, they seem to have a little bit of a hesitation day. As once you get your head above that water, above that new high, it's like, okay, where do we go from here? So a pause is to be expected, and I'm not going to look at it as anything but a pause. The ECB did have its rate announcement. It did cut by its 25 basis point. This was expected, and based on the reaction that I saw with the euro itself, it seemed like it was expected. Not a lot to take from it. So let's get going here. You can see how we finished. The yen, the Dow, the franc, everything. I said, well, the biggest variance was the US dollar was down about 0.23%. The franc was up 0.24%, but everything else was absolutely flat. In fact, I had to double check that Canadian dollar number, folks. It was indeed 0.00 when I pulled the numbers from it. Of course, it could be a little higher or lower than that, but that is pretty much as flat as it gets, folks. 0.02 on the euro, which had an ECB announcement. Scratching my head on that. The pound down 0.14. It's been one of our strongest currencies. It remains strong. So very, very light. 0.12 on the Aussie, 0.04 on the yen. This is just basically an inside absolute nothing day. Let's get back to the overall markets here. So the S&P 0.02%. It did have a push and pull. We have seen these markets go higher and lower, but actually come back to close at its median level. This is very common when it comes to consolidation, especially markets that have just exceeded or are at their high. So the SPX is not a surprise. The world market as well, just barely up 0.07. Crypto dropped 1.11%. It's been super strong. Gold up a little bit, and oil up as well. Overall, there's really just not much out there for just, at least I should say today. So nothing's changed. So I want to go through and take a look at some trades that we've been looking at over the last few days and just kind of emphasize them all. First off, let's finish with our cryptos. Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash pretty much in line with each other. Ethereum dropping about 2%, Litecoin down 0.66%. But I'll tell you what, that Bitcoin trade still looks pretty good. It just has yet to confirm. The overall outlook is going to stay at a +3, and it's pretty easy to do. Now, folks, it's pretty difficult to kind of say, hey, well, we got to go to a +2 or a +1 because of where we're at. We take the whole motion of the ocean into consideration and realize, look, we just exceeded highs in the S&P, and we're parked there. This is about as strong as you could possibly get. A day like today, for me and for traders that are a little bit more optimistic in what could happen, it just gives us a day or so to take a look at some opportunities to move higher. So we're going to stick with that +3 outlook for sure. Let's take a look at the S&P. This is what I'm talking about here, folks. When you have this beautiful area, and I'm emphasizing back at this resistance level that we saw towards the end of March and April. I've been pushing this a lot lately, but it's this area here that causes excitement. Big move a few days back, and it actually pushed these markets, I should say volume-wise. It actually made a nice pivot point a few days ago. This little surge that we had yesterday, a little bit of a hesitation today, that's fine, but this market action, or I should say the price action, has stayed above the major resistance levels. I'll go ahead and see if I can emphasize that line for us here, folks. But here is that resistance level, which was funny because it was only set a couple of weeks ago, right? Mid-May, end of May, but we've exceeded it. Got to stay glass half full here, folks. We got to stay optimistic, and I'm not about to abandon any trade that we've looked at over the last few days because they are absolutely still viable. So let's break into some of the news of today. And what we had was, let me get to it here. Basically, the Euro monetary policy. We saw this coming. We did see that the Canadian bank state did change theirs as well from a 4.7 or from a 5 to a 4.75. Euro went from a 4.5 to a 4.25. But I need you guys to understand these were both expected. With economic reports, folks, when they are consistent and expected, they don't cause a lot of volatility. When they're out of expectations or they exceed something, then you'll get something a little bit more reactionary. A great example of which is something that Rob brought up yesterday, which was the U.S. Services PMI. This showing strength and growth in the U.S., which could kind of justify some of the outliers of that inflation that has not come back down. So it's a nice balancing effect, and it actually is optimistic in the long run. So that's kind of what we're looking for. But when numbers come in as expected, it becomes kind of a yawn event. And that's what I did see, definitely, at least in the euro. So let's jump out there and take a look at some of these currencies and see what they've done. And folks, it's really not going to be too exciting. As nothing has changed, I haven't really moved this board at all. I am definitely still leaning towards the CAD and the yen as the weakest, and the pound and the New Zealand dollar as the strongest. I do like that Bitcoin trade that Rob talked about yesterday. And folks, guess what? It's still on the table because it did not exceed its high base, or what I like to refer to as, for you traders that are still looking for that opportunity, good news, it has yet to trigger. So we'll just keep an eye on it, as all of these trades, to find out if they can indeed get it. So, possible trades-wise, well, let's break down some of the ones we looked at over the last couple of days and some that I might have to share with you. Moving into the charts, folks, I just want to start with the SPY, or I should say the S&P 500. You can see that's that inside day. When you get a day like this, after a pretty good surge, a little bit of a turnaround, nice pivot point a few days ago, big surge yesterday, it's going to hesitate and slow down. This is actually kind of cool because it's kind of recouping some strength, or giving us an opportunity to maybe jump into some of the trades that we've been looking at over the last few days. So let's go ahead and jump straight into one of the currency stocks that we've been talking a little bit, and this is going to be Bitcoin. And what I liked about Bitcoin is the conversation that was made at this level of, hey, we could see a pretty good breakout above, and it just didn't quite confirm there. So yes, folks, go ahead and put this back on your radar. It didn't confirm today. It might confirm tomorrow. This is on the daily chart here. I know you guys like to trade intraday on the currency side. So let's take a look at the 4-hour chart. I'm going to kind of zoom in on this. You can see a little bit of a pullback. This is definitely the area that you're waiting for, and it is still definitely within this range above that 71.7. I just love the way this is working. In fact, take a look at this trade, or this candlestick that it put in. The last 4 hours is a nice hammer candle with a rising 20-period date moving average. So just be a little slow on this. If I was to give you my 2 cents, I would have you guys just focus a little bit more on the day, right? Let's focus more on that daily chart, folks. Let me zoom in here a little bit. And you can see that it's a nice, clean, easy way to jump into this. That way you don't have to worry about getting it the right second or the right minute. Just let this thing continue its strength. So Bitcoin definitely still on the table. Next, I want to jump into what was strong and what was weak. This is the pound. This is one of our stronger currencies, and it still looks to be holding in there. A little bit of a pullback, kind of a push-pull here. Nice green candle yesterday. Didn't get any sort of a follow-through today, but once again, folks, that's all that matters. We can just sit back and keep it on our watch list. I don't think anything triggered up or down, to tell you the truth, folks. So just make sure that you keep what you had strong on your watch list, and what you had weak on your watch list as well, and just be patient enough to let these things trigger. So no change there. Let's jump over to the other strength that we saw over the last few days. Has been moving a little bit higher. Now this, I believe, had triggered. So let's take a look at this on a 4-hour chart because I thought it was pretty interesting, but not quite there yet. This is where I'm going to focus. When I start to see trades get a little bit closer, I start to get a little bit tighter on their time frames. If you guys want some sort of a very specific trigger, understand that you need to take into consideration the risk reward on anything you trade and stay within that time frame. But I did love that high point that it put on that 4-hour chart, and I was waiting for that to break. And as you can see, folks, it just didn't get there. So let's jump straight over to the daily chart on this, and you can see it's pretty much the same thing. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit because I do get these questions a lot. Let me go ahead and erase my line there. He goes, hey, Joe, can I get into this and break it, and follow it as it breaks out, or am I chasing it? A lot of times, hey, we feel that we're late. We feel that we might be chasing. Well, guess what? On the daily chart, yes, it feels like we're chasing it. However, when I see a candlestick like I saw today, it's a little bit promising, thinking that, hey, this might actually pull back. And then I can go back to my 4-hour chart. Let me jump over to it, folks, and show you what I'm looking at. Wait for that correction to happen. Sorry, folks, I have to shrink this up and get it nice and clean so we can see it. Wait for this to get above this mark. And we'll call it what you want. You go above the high of that candle there. Something above that high maybe would be a good way to enter that. That way you don't have to follow it along for each day. You can keep an eye on this intraday because I just think that we're going to get a continuation over the next little bit. So it's still a great trade on the New Zealand dollar. Now, folks, that's it as itself. However, we are going to pair it with the strongest and the weakest. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. So obviously the first one I'm going to take a look at here is the New Zealand dollar and the yen. And we'll take a look at it. And yes, you guys can see this is definitely starting to slide a little bit lower on the 4-day. However, the daily is going to give us a little bit clearer of a picture. Wow. It's funny when you pull these charts up and you see how pretty much mainstream this. Look at that. Oh my goodness. 1, 2, 3, 4 straight days. And I think those highs are within 15, 20 pips of each other. Jeez Louise. So wait for a breakout, something clear, something comfortably above maybe the 97.00, whatever. You could put an order out there, set up your stop loss any way you want, but it's still feasible. It's a great trade. I think it's cool. It has not triggered yet, but definitely going to stay on the watch list. So let's jump over to the next one, which is the Great British Pound and the CAD. We'll take a look at it. Now this one has slid a little higher, at least on the daily chart, but a little bit of a subsequent pullback. This comes back to, hey, am I chasing, right? So you might be chasing, but if you're worried about that, let's take a look at the 4-hour chart. The 4-hour chart might give us something a little bit more measurable, especially something when it comes to consolidation or an area where it could pivot. So it is definitely having a little bit of a retracement here. That's totally fine. We can just go ahead and just put our line in the sand, put it above this 1.752, or if you really wanted to be a little bit more reserved and make sure that it confirms, you can go all the way to the high here. Now that might seem super high for some of you guys that are intraday, but on the daily side, that might be a little bit more feasible of a trigger than something as tight as the 752. So it just depends on the type of trader you are. But as you can see, guys, not much has changed over a day. These trades still look really, really good. And that's all I've got for today. Not a lot has changed. 2 good market days in a row. Markets push higher when it comes to the equity wise as far as the U.S. markets go. ECB rate cut comes right after the CAD rate cut, right? Both down 0.25 basis point, both expected. What's really cool is these currencies are continuing with their original trends. So it's great, folks. If you think you've missed a trade over the last few days, you haven't. Keep your watch list frosty, for better of a term, right? Wait for it to confirm. This is beautiful because if we get another down day, just wait. There's no reason to push a button until you get confirmation. So play relative strength and weakness, proper position sizing as all. And remember, folks, if you're waiting for something to move to a high base and break higher, you might have to readjust your stop entry and your target and rethink your risk, the size of the position that you had before. So keep that in mind as you move forward. Thanks, folks, for joining me. We'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.